When testing an application with K6, we will send requests to various pages or API endpoints. Sometimes we might need to dig into this result and understand the root cause for an issue that we are observing. For example, we might notice that the overall request duration is outside an acceptable value, but we don't know why, which particular pages or endpoints are responsible for this. In this lecture, I will show you one approach on how to deal with something like this by using a K6 concept which is called tags. So what do I mean by that? Let's start with the following situation that we have here. So for example, we have set here a threshold for the HTTP request duration, and we expect 95% of the request to be below 1000 milliseconds. Perfect. And now let's assume that in our default function, we are making 2 HTTP requests. And for this example, I'm going to use a service which is called Maki.io. Now, essentially, this service allows us to create mock endpoints. It means that they're not real endpoints, but we can control these endpoints and they can help us simulate something in K6, which is quite important. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go here to new mock. And for this first mock, I'm going to make sure that I have here the status 200 OK. And apart from this, I'm simply going to go ahead and click here on generate my HTTP response. So this will generate back here an address. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And going back in K6, this will be the first request that we're sending out. So this will return status 200 OK. Perfect. Now I'm going to go back here to this and I'm going to create a new mock. And this time I'm going to select here a status 201 created. So in this case, we're simulating that the second request is creating something. It's doing maybe a bit more hard work than simply, the 200 one. So for this one as well, I'm going to go ahead and generate a HTTP response. And again, we're going to get here an address, which is different from the previous one. And I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so now we have 2 requests. So let's go ahead, and we don't have any duration or virtual users configured. So essentially, we're going to go once over the default function. We're going to have only one iteration. So let's use K6 to run this file. And if we're taking a look at the results, what we'll see here, we have the HTTP request duration. And this is super fast. So it's the 95th percentile is 52 milliseconds, right? One iteration, 2 requests being sent out. Okay, nothing special. Now, let's assume that all of a sudden, the HTTP endpoint that has the status code 201 will take longer. And let's see how this will be reflected in the results. Now, because this is a mock endpoint, we can simulate that. So there is a query param, and this is actually mentioned here inside the documentation. And it says here that we can use this query param to add a delay that we can configure, right? So we can add a delay of up to 60 seconds. Now all we have to do is add this here. I'm going to copy it. And going back here, I'm going to go to the second request, which is with a status 201. And 100 milliseconds is not enough. I'm going to go ahead and add here 2000 milliseconds, which is essentially 2 seconds. I'm going to run this once again. And this time, our threshold will be reached. You will see here, we are now at 1.96 seconds at the 95th percentile. So this is way above what we have configured. And this is just because one request is all of a sudden taking much longer. Now, of course, we know that this request is the one because we have simulated this failure. But in reality, you're going to have a lot of requests, and you may not know exactly which of these requests is actually responsible for this. Now, in K6, one of the ways that you can use to drill into these results to help visualize the results, sort them, or filter them is to use tags. Now, by default, K6 already has some tags. So these are called system tags. So if you go here to the documentation, you're going to see here system tags. And there are different kinds of tags. So by default, all the requests that are being sent out are tagged, for example, by the HTTP request method, or are being tagged by the status, or by many other things. Now, in this case, let's just assume that we want to make two different metrics. We want to drill into this duration metric and want to separate this by the status code. How can we do this, right? Well, you'll see here that this metric here, HTTP request duration, only offers this information. So we don't know from here which is the request or which type of request is causing this problem. Now, because these requests are automatically tagged, it means that we can use actually these tags inside the thresholds here. So we can leave this initial threshold as it is right now, and we can add an additional threshold. So what we will do here, we're going to still use HTTP request duration. And next, what we can do is apply a tag filter to this metric. So the way we do this is by opening and closing a brace. And then within the brace, what we're going to write here is, for example, the name of the tag. So status is, for example, one of the system tags that is automatically added by K6. So we can write here simply status. And for example, we can write here 200. Now, this is the entire name of the property that we have here. So you'll notice here, this is right now not really valid JavaScript. So we can put here a column and, for example, use also here the percentile. But this is not going to be valid JavaScript. It doesn't like how we have written this. So we need to put this between single or double quotes. So the first part, which is the name of the property, needs to be between quotes because we have used here the brace, also the column. So we're a bit confusing JavaScript when we're using things like this. So this is why we need to put this between quotes. Of course, just as well, we could have put here HTTP request duration as well. But because there are no special characters in there, that's not really needed. So only for this, let's say, special cases, we will be doing this. Okay, now we have configured this here as a threshold. So let's take a look at the results. I'm going to run this once again. And what do we see here? Well, you'll notice here, under HTTP request duration, we're also going to get here status column 200. So this is the tag filter that we have just created. And you will see here now statistics only for this particular request. And actually, it looks good, right? So the 95th percentile is only 62 milliseconds. That's very, very good. Sometimes it may happen that you're using something that doesn't exist. So let's just assume that you have written status incorrectly. I'm going to remove here a T. You think, oh, this is good. I just added that here. That's perfect. Going to run this. No warnings. Nothing is going to tell you that there's something wrong. And if you take a look at the results, you even see here what you have written incorrectly. You'll get a check mark. But super important. If you notice here 0 seconds, 0 seconds, 0 seconds, 0 seconds, and 0 seconds, and once again 0 seconds, it means you have written this incorrectly. So this is not a correct way to write this. There's something wrong with the expression that you have used, the tag you have used. Something is wrong there, right? So if you get 0 seconds everywhere, not good. It's not a good thing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fix this. So status. I'm missing a T here. So that should be good. Okay, so we have this. And then also let's add this tag filter also for the 201 status. I'm going to go ahead, just use the exact same one, but modify here and write 201 instead of 200. Let's run this once again. And this time what we're going to see here is that we have the HTTP request duration. This is failing as expected. We have here the first filter for the status 200. All good. But then when we're checking for the status 201, we're going to get here different value. Now in this case, we have only used 2 requests, so it's relatively easy. But in a real scenario, you can have different kinds of requests. And you will have many, many requests. And then if all of a sudden the data that you're getting back is unclear and you don't know exactly, you cannot really pinpoint like which kind of requests are actually causing this problem, using the tags can really help you. Now this is just an example with the status, but as I said before, there are already other defined system tags that you can use depending on what you need. So definitely I'm going to link this as a resource to this lecture. Different kinds of system tags that you can use. You can write thresholds for them. You can really dig a bit into what is exactly going on.